Well, and I live in a new state where I've never lived before, and I actually had my mom send me one of her football jerseys because I don't own one because I don't watch sports. And
Amen.
it's actually a rival team to where I live now. I've never gotten so many death stares from people wanting to buy cat food before in my entire life.
Where do you work?
I work at, yeah, we work at a pet, actually at a PetSmart, yes, a pet store. But
Nice. Yeah.
Nice. Okay, and with that lovely intro, hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Mad Sounds. I'm Mark.
I'm John.
And with us today, we have another John.
And we just cut him off, too. He was trying to introduce himself.
I'm Jonny. I'm a guy who says...
You may know him as ViralRak. We talked about the new Ghost album a couple weeks ago, and now he is a co-host for this very special Double John edition of Mad Sounds.
Double the John, double the fun.
Double the length too. This podcast is going to be 3 hours.
Yeah, that's the standard length for my podcast. So I'm open for that, man.
It was all part of my evil plan to get you to stop making these 45 minutes.
It's not going to happen, man. It's not going to happen. 45 minutes. That's where it's at. That's a
good driving podcast. That's a commute cast right there. I mean, hey.
Exactly. That's the perfect length. That's the perfect length to get your double dose of John and, Spin It reviews too.
Mark
I feel like the third wheel on my own channel right now.
Dude, that's how it's supposed to feel. That's how you know you're doing it right.
Yes.
You're making the guests feel so welcome.
Fair enough.
Charisma around,
Yeah. So, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, speaking of driving, I've been trying to, since I've been a part of my own podcast, not my own, but been a part of your podcast. I've started trying to listen to a podcast here and there, on the way to work sometimes, and it's just there's got to be something that really catches my ear, and I started picking up Mark Maron's podcast.
Nice.
Because I got into watching his show that's on Netflix.
It's always a good place to start.
Exactly, and I feel like that's given me more of an ear, I suppose, for exactly what people look for in a podcast.
That's a good way to really get into the, because it's a certain type of style. It's like talk radio, but also not.
Right.
Because it's not live, so you have to kind of fill in for more than a typical live show would do.
Right.
So it's actually really good to engage in podcasts, especially ones around the type of podcast that you do. It's like I do a video game podcast, so a majority of the podcasts I listen to are video game related. But I do listen to some music podcasts because here and there we dip into music. Obviously I love music, so there's a huge aspect of that I want to hear more about. So it's good to do, and I think that's awesome.
Yeah, and like you alluded to, you actually did or do your own podcast. What exactly is the state of that?
Well, it's since I don't live in Virginia anymore. I live halfway across the country from everyone from the guys I did the podcast with. We'll meet when the stars align, and we're able to record the podcast over Skype. And we stream it. We actually do a live podcast. We do it live whenever we can. It's usually on Sundays now because it's the one day where I'm usually off and the other guys are usually available. And it's less video games now than it used to be. It's called Analog Input. We really just talk about everything that we want to for 3 hours. And it's basically like a roundtable discussion for a bit. And it's fun.
Nice.
Yeah, that reminds me a bit of. I know you're a fan of SourceFed, and you know about their channel, Super Panic Frenzy. They launched a podcast recently, and they tried making a gaming podcast for the first 2 episodes, and then they were like, "Yeah, we're not even gonna pretend anymore. This is just about whatever." And then they did a half an entire episode about doing bad accents of other nationalities.
Well, the fact is, once you get going on a podcast, it's so easy to make things blend together. The music relates to possibly something that was the music in a video game, or things just start blending together, and you get going on video games, you get going on movies, and somehow it all connects.
I mean, we went from accent. We actually talked about accents in the last podcast, and we delved deep into an argument about the Confederate flag thing that's been going on in America. Like that was like me and my friend Eric were like full blown yelling at one point at each other, and my poor friend Dusty, he's just sitting there like trying, like guys, we have to let's try and pull it together a little bit.
Yeah. We're live right now.
I can relate to Dusty at multiple points in multiple conversations.
What are you trying to say, Mark?
This podcast.
No, not yet, but you never know when it might come up. But yeah, as for my own podcast listening, like it's maybe 80% of the time when I'm driving, like to work and back and stuff like that. And yeah, there's a good variety of stuff. Like some of it's stuff that YouTubers have launched, which naturally has some connection to other mediums and stuff like that. Your biscuits, your not too deeps, you know. Then there are music-related ones, you know, your Absolute Punk podcast, and Billboard has this thing with the alternative stuff called the Alt in Our Stars. So I'll admit, not the best name, but yeah. Then of course there's Full Frontal with guys from All Time Low.
Yeah, I've been keeping up with that one recently.
Yeah, and of course your staples, your Nerdist, you know, all that fun stuff.
Right. My hardest thing with podcasts, I think, is just the time. Like, I generally feel like I don't have the time just because I try to get in so many albums in a week, or, you know, that combined with work and work on, like, ARTV and stuff. My question to you guys is, when do you think the best time to really get in a podcast is? Because generally commuting from work and stuff, I'm listening to the next album that I'm going to review.
Personally, the only time I ever used to, because I don't listen to podcasts as much as I used to, because like you guys, I like music. I want to listen to music.
Yeah.
But when I have a long trip is when I usually catch up on my podcasts, or when I'm relaxing at the end of the day. So like, say I had a long day at work and I just want to kind of zone out while I do something, I'll usually have podcasts on in the background. But like, before I moved out to Indiana, I was making lots of 10-hour drives from West Virginia/Virginia, where I lived, to Indiana. And so on those 10-hour drives, I would mix music listening and podcast listening together.
I got
and
you.
that's kind of where I get a lot of my podcasting done.
Yeah, you know, personally, I just prefer to listen when driving, in a way, to listening to albums, since I mean I can listen to that when I'm like going on a walk or doing homework or whatever. That'd be more when I would like listen to albums passively in the background for really going more into them. But I kind of like listening to podcasts while driving and stuff like that, just because it kind of feels like you're listening in on a conversation, and it can make things a bit more engaging. I don't really know how to put it other than that, but
yeah, I think that makes sense, and in a way, like I think Jonny was saying earlier, talking about it's kind of like talk radio or something like that. It's kind of like taking the place of like what NPR maybe used to be for a lot of people. You know, instead you hook up your phone to the auxiliary or whatever, and you're listening to it there instead of your drive time radio. when
your podcast friend is handed the aux cord. It's
Mark. Oh, I've got a story.
Listen, I played you a full episode of the Jake and Amir podcast, If I Were You, and you freaking loved it!
I did not love it. I did not love it, right? I'm going to say that right off the bat. I did not love it. This is what happened. Let me tell everyone the full story here of what happened whenever I picked Mark up from the first time that we met in person from the airport.
You never told me what you thought of the experience. I wonder how, like, our perspectives are.
So we get into the car, and, you know, we talk for a couple of minutes, and within 5 minutes, Mark has demanded the aux cord and plugs in Jake and Amir's podcast. Within 5 minutes.
I didn't think it was demanding. I thought I just asked.
It was like it's like something like a Vine that you would see, like, yo, let me get the aux cord. I'm just kidding. It wasn't that over the top. It really wasn't demanding, but it was just like Mark was ready to share that podcast right then and there. I was like, whenever I was on the way to pick him up, I was like, okay, yeah, we're probably gonna like rock out. I was like, I got some tunes picked out that we're gonna listen to, and it's like, oh no, just kidding. We're gonna listen to the Jake and Amir podcast, and we're not gonna talk.
I feel like that's I did not imagine my joke would turn into an actual story. That's beautiful.
Listen, I thought it was justified because we talked about before that you were interested in that podcast because you like their old college humor videos, and I suggested it, and you were like, okay, so I did.
Oh, I thought, but the thing is, at the time, I thought you meant like later on.
Not. All right. How you doing? Listen to this podcast.
Well, it was an hour drive to your house. It only makes sense.
But see, this is what it all circles back to, is the fact that it's differing perspectives as to what you do in the car. See, me, I'm over here rocking out in the car, like at all times. Like, the speakers are turned up. And, like, you can rock out to a podcast. One can rock out to a podcast, I'm sure. Oh, yeah, but I just don't do as much headbanging to Jake and Amir as I do to, say, you know.
Stone Age.
Yeah, exactly. Or the latest Ghost album that you guys
it's
covered.
debatable. It's debatable.
That's true.
But you know, that's kind of circles back to, in all seriousness, kind of a reason why I kind of prefer listening to podcasts to, like, a full album in the car is that, you know what, I'm listening to these new albums and analyzing them, and part of it is like the flow of the album, how it is in the full listen, and there aren't many places where I go like 40 to 50 minutes in a single drive, you know?
See, that's where the difference is. For me, I pretty frequently have about a 45-minute drive that I have to take. So
when I was living out in Virginia and I had a car, I had those longer drives like John did. So I feel that.
Yeah. So
yeah, and I went to the show last night, and like, for example, of one way where I would play an album is that I was listening to this new Crossfaith album, and you know, I was going down to someplace in like more toward like downtown San Diego, which is maybe 45 minutes away, and I figured, you know, I could probably play this Crossfaith album in its entirety to get a general vibe of it, since it's my first time listening to it, and yeah, I think that's sort of an exception case, but, you know, when I'm going to work and it takes, like, or school and it takes, like, 15, 20 minutes, then I'm just listening to, like, 4 or 5 songs, then it feels like I'm just listening to a couple of EPs. You know?
That's when generally, if I've got a short drive like that, like, for the most part, I'm the guy that's still, like, rocking his iPod, like, the classic 160 gig model, like, rocking that in the car, and I'm, like, shuffling through stuff, you know.
No, I was the same way. Before my last iPod, and the last iPod I had 120 gigs. It was full. I had over 20,000 songs. You know, that's not my whole library, but it was a good chunk of my library that I would constantly listen to. Right. And I was the same way. I'd hook it into my car, and I'd shuffle through stuff, or I'd play a playlist that I wanted to listen to at the time.
That's exactly how I am. I like whatever mood I'm in. I've got like a rock playlist, a hip hop, my favorite tracks, etc. So I'm on the same page as you there. I like to just kind of like shuffle through whatever I'm in the mood for. If it's a morning drive, I'm going for maybe my adult contemporary playlist, or my
Lisa Loeb. Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh yeah.
Suzanne Vega in the house in the mornings, man.
Or some days I'm just in a mood for terrible music, and I'll throw on Maroon 5's last album.
Oh yeah.
Okay, that's taking it too far.
No, it's not taking it far enough. We can hit you hard, Mark.
Exactly.
You animal.
Don't you mean animal? Is that what you mean?
You animal mole.
You know, I'm going to critique both of you guys there because your falsettos were not on point by any means. You need to get a little bit higher with that.
I would, but I don't want to upset my neighbor's dogs, so I'm gonna.
Well, I want to say, I just said falsetto, and I don't know. It made me think of vocal ranges and that sort of thing, and it reminds me about Sam Smith. He just got announced as the latest guy that's going to be. Hey, I was trying to be smooth as silk. Come on, guys.
That is some
using my segue.
that was glorious.
Random reference.
It wasn't a very. It was an all right one. I'll give you that. It was.
Hey,
all right
I just saw Weird Al at that fair a couple weeks ago, and
Light 5.
It's on my mom.
Light 5 out of 10 for that. But yeah, what do you guys think? What do you guys think about the UK singer Sam Smith getting picked as the new Bond theme performer?
Well, I don't know, because I feel like, and this may be just because I've seen who's done the recent Bond films or Bond soundtracks themes. he doesn't feel like, I know he's a big name because he had that one song, but I don't know any of his other songs to really justify, okay, yeah, this guy's good enough he has the clout to make this Bond theme, because before that you had Adele, who had many hits before that. She had proven she was an artist who was better than just one song.
Right.
You know, other people have done it. Duran Duran has done one. Madonna has done one. You know, Tina Turner. These big...
Right. Mark?
Where do you go?
We lost Jonny. Man down.
Oh, dang.
Man down. Where are you from? Sorry, Kendrick Lamar reference. Anyways, I think until Jonny gets back with us due to technical difficulties, he was going on about some of the artists that have done them over the years. And yeah, we've seen everything from Jack White and Alicia Keys to Madonna to who was the Paul McCartney. Paul McCartney himself was involved in it. Paul McCartney and the Wings did one of the themes back in the day. It's just a matter of, like Jonny was kind of saying.
He's back in.
Oh, and I covered for you, man.
I don't know. Okay, cool. I don't know why that happened. That was the weirdest thing. Like I said, the call ended because the computer went to sleep. My computer didn't go to sleep. I was looking at it just fine.
Okay. Anyway,
my apologies. But anyway, bigger names have been doing the Bond theme, so it's weird to see this newer guy who doesn't really have a whole lot of star power doing this theme. And I think it's good but bad because I don't know this guy's full range as an artist yet.
Well, maybe it's just because I've covered his album, but I feel like he had one of the best-selling albums of last year. I feel like he's kind of not that he's been established for that long, but I feel like in the past year he's kind of had his name out there with 3 different hits. He had Lay Me Down, Stay With Me, and I Know I'm Not the Only One. Those 3
and that's not including Latch.
Yeah, exactly, with Disclosure, exactly. And so he's had his name pretty prominently out there, not only in the UK, but all 3 of those songs, and Latch as well, crossed over into the US Top 40, so...
Maybe I'm just a curmudgeon and I don't know his stuff. Then I mean, maybe that's it. But I mean, I'm not saying I'm not optimistic. I don't know the guy enough.
Yeah, you know what I will say is that I'm curious how his voice is gonna fit with that like James Bond theme kind of vibe, because like Adele before, like she has that super like epic booming voice that really fits on like Skyfall, but I feel like Sam Smith is a bit more restrained, like a bit more like emotionally based, but more in like I don't know, not really the kind of same feelings you get listening to a song like "Stay With Me" as you would listening to, I don't know, "Live and Let Die." You know?
I don't think you've heard some of the terrible Bond themes that I have, because there have been some stiff, emotionless Bond themes out there, and it's not necessarily like. Have you heard Madonna's?
Yeah, I was about to mention that. That's the first thing that came to mind when you said that.
Yeah,
hers is so terrible.
It's so,
and I heard the movie's terrible too.
It's so 2002 is what I wanted to say. It's so 2002 that it hurts. I went back and listened to this one. I realized I was talking to you guys the other day, and I was like, I don't think I've heard that many of the Bond themes. Well, I actually went back and looked, and I was like, okay, I've heard some of these. It's just that I've blocked them out of my memory for a reason.
Because they're terrible.
Yes, like, the Madonna one is so bad. I was reading through the comments on that video, and people are just saying that there were people literally saying that it was the best Bond theme that had ever been done.
What?
I wanted to pull my hair out.
Nostalgia does terrible, terrible things.
I mean, but seriously, like, I mean, it's down there for me. Like, there have been some much better Bond themes out there. Oh
yeah.
Duran Duran's was pretty good. I enjoyed theirs.
Yeah, I feel like isn't theirs like the only one to hit #1? I could be wrong though. But I think I saw some article that said that.
I believe.
Skyfall did it?
Yeah, I know Duran Duran's did hit #1. It's just that I don't know if there are others that hit #1. I know Skyfall was in the top 10.
Yeah, hold on. I'm doing quick research.
I'm doing the same because Duran posted on their Facebook page earlier today, and I just looked at like the thumbnail of the article, and it said something like that.
Yeah, in the U.S. it didn't reach. It reached 1 in like smaller countries like South Korea, but like Skyfall reached only as high as #8 in America in the Hot 100.
Oh,
Which is a shame because that's a really good one.
I see it right here. It's according to this article. It may surprise people given the illustrious names that performed the Bond themes, but the only time any of these songs hit #1 on the U.S. Billboard Hot 100 was Duran Duran's 1985 tune for Roger Moore's final Bond film.
I mean, it was good, but it's not my favorite out of the ones that I have heard. I haven't heard them all, I will say that. But
it's not mine either.
Yeah.
So good, though.
Aha,
what would be your
didn't
favorites?
they do one? Didn't Aha do one?
Did they do one?
Yeah, I'm almost positive they did, or maybe it wasn't the theme. Maybe it was just like a song in the movie or something like that. I could have sworn Aha did one though.
They might have. Hold on, doing more research.
Yeah,
they did for the Living
Living Daylight.
Living Daylights. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I don't think it was very popular here in the U.S. though.
That's one of those Bond films I've never even seen. So
I think that was one of the ones that was just like Bond was kind of like at one of its cooling off points before it kind of caught on in popularity again. You know, it goes through those weird cycles where it gets rejuvenation.
It does. When it's usually like at the cap end of somebody's tenure as Bond, they usually like dull out before sparking it back up again.
Right, and isn't this Daniel Craig's last performance as Bond?
I think so, yeah.
Is it?
I mean, there's been all this talk about, whether Idris Elba or someone's gonna be the next one. So yeah, I think that's probably a safe guess. I'm not sure if it has been like officially confirmed, but I wouldn't be surprised if this was.
Yeah, I wouldn't either, especially as he's getting he's not getting that old. It's just that I don't know that he really wants to renew his contract or continue playing the character. So,
I mean, has it been over a decade now, or at least near a decade?
It's been right at it, I believe. Casino Royale came out in 2005, I think. So, right at a decade now.
Which is crazy, because like I feel like he was just put as Bond yesterday.
Yeah.
So that's insane to me.
I'm trying to think of back to the themes. Jack White and Alicia Keys, Another Way to Die. I've got a funny relationship with that track, even though it is one of my favorite Bond themes. Still, I used to work at a movie theater, and this was, you know how like stores will have like kind of like a constant playlist looped within the store. Well, this particular Bond theme was one of like the 12 songs on the movie theater's iPod. And let me tell you, between 2009 and 2011, I hated that song.
I don't blame you.
I was looking for another way to kill that song.
While it's one of my favorite Bond themes, and I love the pairing of Jack White and Alicia Keys, I would probably be feeling the same way after maybe a week of that.
Yeah.
So I couldn't imagine 2 years of that.
Just
that would drive
rotation.
me up a wall. Oh my goodness.
That's when you start just begging the owners of the theater to just add some more music onto the playlist, please.
Anything else, please. Other Bond themes. I'll take the Madonna one over this at this point.
Fun fact, that was on there too. So.
Oh God!
I'm telling you, every night when it came time to clean up the theaters and like we could hear the song more prominently, like everybody was just losing their minds.
Yeah,
that's terrible.
And to think that I was thinking about applying for a job near my movie theater. I don't want to risk that. Run.
Awolnation reference.
Yeah.
Yes. No, it's a Vine reference. Okay.
Sorry.
Too hip for us, John.
I'm sorry, but that actually another perfect segue. Mark sent me a video this week that I found really, really intriguing. It was of Brock Baker of Brock's Dubs, and he made a little edit on his Facebook page for The Brave Little Toaster, you know, that movie from the 80s?
Yeah.
And he set the Little Toaster's Nightmare, he set Run by Awolnation to that dream sequence, and it fit perfectly. I've watched it like 20 times. And
really?
It's like the perfect sequence. I've showed it to so many people, and everybody loves it and thinks it fits so perfectly.
I saw it on my YouTube feed, and I haven't watched it because he's posting a couple videos of the Brave Little Toaster on his second channel. I was like, what the hell is Brock Baker doing? And then I saw that he did the Run thing, and I was like, I don't know if I want to see this because it's either amazing or incredibly stupid.
I thought it was amazing.
I have held myself back. I'll probably check it out now though, because if it fits, that'll be interesting.
You know, it's funny, John. You told me when we were talking about it, then you were freaking out about it, that Greyfield Toaster like your favorite childhood movie or something. I had no idea. I was just thinking like, hey, we both like Awolnation. Here's a cool thing.
Yeah, but then little did Mark realize that I would fanboy over it.
Yeah, I mean, I liked it, but you went insane.
I loved The Brave Little Toaster as a kid, so I can sympathize with John here.
Yeah, it's one of those movies that holds up still to this day. I feel like just because there's so many adult themes that you don't really catch on to, you know?
Yeah, I definitely. Well, and that's what makes a lot of older, not Disney movies, like any old Don Bluth or any not of those two companies, animated pictures, they have some of those themes to them, and they fit really well. Like Land Before Time. It's just sad.
Mm-hmm. It's devastating.
It's incredibly sad. So like it's, but like in a very mature way. So it's like that's what makes us. You don't get that a whole lot nowadays in kids' movies.
Right, and that's what's lost, and that's why I go in and see something like Minions, and not that I actually did see that. I watched the trailer for it, but you can just tell.
I saw it. It was okay.
Yeah. There's no heart though. Where's the heart?
Yeah. I mean, there are like some pretty funny moments, but it's nothing I'll like remember in its entirety. Like, even like 2 weeks ago, you know.
Yeah.
And like, why wouldn't you strive when you're taking the time out of yourself, out of your life to physically animate something? Why wouldn't you want it to hold weight as an art piece? Because animated pictures take a lot of time. They take less time than they used to, but they still take a lot of time and effort to sculpt something through a computer even. So why wouldn't you want that to have some sort of significance?
Well, I think that's the problem with a lot of filmmakers and stuff. They look at it from an industry's perspective. They're looking at it from how much money can this make Disney, how much can this make DreamWorks, and there's animators like Pixar out there that I feel still do really care about their craft, and I don't think it's necessarily that it's that all of these animators don't care. It's just the fact that I feel like the pressures from the studio breathing down their shoulders saying, hey, make something as accessible as possible, and we can't.
We gotta make money.
Exactly.
We gotta make all the money in the world.
And we gotta do it now. We gotta have Minions 2 ready for 2017 before the kids grow up.
Exactly.
Pump them out annually, baby.
We gotta do this. It's a business here. I gotta feed my kids. Let's do it. I gotta eat the golden flakes for breakfast.
Although, sort of connecting it to like a better modern movie, something I was going to mention when you were talking about The Brave Little Toaster, is that I feel like there's a parallel to be drawn between that and the Lego Movie in terms of stuff that when you look at the title, you think this isn't going to be good, and then it is. But it's just because of like the heart that they put into it.
Right.
I still haven't seen the Lego Movie. I need to really badly see it.
Yeah, you should.
I would even agree with Mark. I didn't love it quite as much as he did, but I still thoroughly enjoyed it.
I think it's just because like I've always lived like a mile away from Legoland pretty much, so I grew up with all that kind of stuff. And
I grew up in a city. Look at me, I'm Mark. I can go to Legoland. Look at me, Mr. Moneybags.
Hey, if I was Mr. Moneybags, then I would be going actually inside Comic-Con every single year instead of just taking the trolley around it like a cheapskate.
Says the man who hung out with Philip DeFranco.
Yeah, like it's nothing. Oh, me and Phil, we go back. I got a cell number. We have coffee every Tuesday.
I got an interview with Steve DeRizoga.
Yeah, look at me.
Gobble, gobble, gobble.
But you were saying you had a deep connection with Legos, and that's why you like the Lego Movie.
Yeah. I mean, that deep connection. Come on.
Deep connections.
Like as deep as like an actual Lego connection from Lego to Lego. It can be pulled apart just like
that. You made it clever.
Mega wrecked.
Okay, so continuing with this music podcast.
Oh yeah. Yes, Legos.
This started off as a podcast about podcasts, so I don't know where we're going from here.
Okay, well, so.
It's okay,
you know, I
guys.
think
Everything is awesome.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Darkness. I'm so convinced that was like a Nine Inch Nails parody or something. That Batman song. It's just incredible.
So
Okay,
continuing with your music podcast, Mark.
Yeah. So, one thing that we talked about last episode, that we asked if you wanted some feedback on in the comments, if you wanted more of, and we got an overwhelming majority saying yes. Talking about more of our music pet peeves.
Pet peeves.
Music.
Yeah.
That was a pretty good on the fly theme song right there. That was wonderful, actually.
I'm gonna crop out a clip of that and just use it whenever.
There you go.
Pet peeves.
Music.
Yeah.
We nailed it. That is wonderful. That's like Sam Smith like doing the Bond theme song type good.
Yeah, that's. Where's our check, Warner Brothers?
It's in the mail.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Pet peeves.
Have
Pet
you,
peeves in music.
you guys have you because guests should go first. Mr. John or John, do you have any in mind that you just feel like ranting your brain into mush about?
I've got one that is pretty upsetting to me that I somehow missed on our little 7 on Sunday episode that you and me did, Mark, whenever we were collaborating. But something that just really gets under my skin just because it feels like such a damn cash grab and nothing else is the fact that I see so many artists these days and so many mainly bands taking an album, releasing it with like 10 songs, and it's like barely like album length. It's like they put out like a 32-minute album, and then 8 months later, 10 months later, a year later, we get a deluxe edition repackaging of the album, and we're expected to buy the album again just so we can get the 2 new songs that put out. And not only does it mess with the flow of the album, because it just feels like they recorded 2 songs on the road, throw them in the middle of the track listing somewhere, and repackage it as a new record, and we're expected to go out and pick it up. I don't do it. I don't go for it, and I pretty much boycott it.
Sing it, sister, sing!
Can I get a hallelujah, amen?
Hallelujah!
Amen. Amen.
I definitely I agree. If only to have a slight abridged to it. I don't like when bands rearrange track listing because it is it's a concise, not narrative, but it's like throwing deleted scenes it's like releasing a director's cut of a movie. It's kind of odd to do, and there's sometimes things that are taken out that were integral to the plot. So I definitely disagree with that. But if a band releases a deluxe edition because the album sold well with like off-cuts or like remixes, I'm okay with that.
Well, I get people doing that maybe a decade plus ago, but in this day and age when you can just like stream anything, I actually kind of talked about this when I reviewed the new Bon Jovi album. Basically, I talked about how they released it as just a fan album to pass time until their next album comes out, and it's just like scrapped from their last couple albums essentially, even though they didn't phrase it exactly like that, obviously. And I was just thinking, guys, if you really don't think this is like a legitimate part of your discography, in 2015 you can just throw it up on YouTube, and you'll still be one of the highest grossing touring acts in the country.
Kind of like Miley Cyrus did.
Yeah. With her.
I never thought.
It
pains me to say this, but Miley Cyrus might have done something right.
Mark, I can speak to you right now. I have to go tend to the garden.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, Mark, I'm not really feeling this podcast anymore, man. I'm just gonna be. I mean, like Jonny came up with an excuse. I'm just gonna be blunt.
he's just peacing out. He's just done.
Yeah.
Okay, but anyway, I completely agree with that. Like, even I remember seeing like a bunch of albums that I've even really liked from the last few years have kind of made me question, how much I respect the artist in question. Like, even like the Capital Cities album did this, the One Republic album did this,
All Time Low.
the Bayside album did this. Oh, the All Time Low is one of the worst cases.
Yes.
Where
Don't panic.
not-
It's longer now.
See, and like, of course, they were trying to be all subversive with that name.
Yeah.
But not only did they just tack on some songs, but they put it in the middle of places in the track list.
It threw it off.
And they could, and it was like 4 or 5 songs, so it could have been its own EP instead.
Yeah, it threw off the feel of the album. I haven't even listened to more than 2 of those new songs just because I was so pissed about them throwing off the track listing, because Don't Panic is one of my favorite pop punk records of the past 5 years, and the fact that it flowed so well because there was 13 songs on it, and
12.
it felt like 12, sorry. I keep thinking of extra tracks. 12 songs, and it flowed perfectly from start to finish to me, and it had a concise begin and ending. And then to throw 4 tracks in the middle, it just felt pointless. At least put them at the end.
Yeah, and coming from someone that has listened to all those songs, at least 2 of them are like complete filler and like voluntary filler. For an album that had no filler before. Like every song on that hit, and now not every song on it hits, and that just hurts as a whole.
Yeah, and I don't even feel like tracks like A Love Like War even had the same vibe that the tracks on Don't Panic had. And then you go back a year later and add something on and try. You're not in the same state of mind as when you made the album the first time. So that's another reason why I'm opposed to it. So.
Yeah, and I just wonder, like, coming from a musician's perspective, like, or the perspective of the musicians themselves, like, why not just save the song if you think it's good enough to warrant an entire re-release? Why not just save the song for when you're writing your next album?
Unheard of. We need the money now. We need the money now.
Mark, they gotta feed their kids the Golden Flakes. What are you talking about?
I know, but it's just an idea, you know.
I mean, that's an artistic idea, but it's not a corporate idea. You gotta think. You gotta
make
think
like sweet cheddar, that sweet moolah.
You gotta have stogies in your mouth when you're thinking about music, because you gotta think of how it's gonna make business happen. You know,
cash.
This ain't your mom and pop's music industry no more, Mark. This is corporate sellouts.
Hey, you're never thinking on your feet, Marky.
You gotta think with your brain juices and your cigar juices.
Okay, what voice are we even doing right now? Is this like a bad Mark Wahlberg impression or something?
I'm channeling as much as I can into every other corporate, like, big
Bostonian corporate.
Yeah. Like I gotta have all the monies for my New England chowders. That's all I need.
If we were doing Mark Wahlberg, we'd be talking like this. Guys, the plants are coming to attack us.
That's what's going to happen.
It's all happening.
What have I done?
Optimus Prime. What's going on? Optimus Prime.
At least now we have 2 marks to fill the 2 marks.
We got Mark and the Fun Bunch.
Yeah.
We had #1 hits.
No, Mark and the John Bunch. We got an episode name.
Mark and the John Bunch. I'm feeling some good vibrations here.
We got those good vibrations.
I cannot believe he was actually a guy with a hit song.
#1 hit song.
#1 hit song.
#1 hit song.
I mean, granted, I love the piano tone in it because early '90s piano tones are friggin' beautiful. Yeah. That's still like, ugh.
I posted that song this week. I posted it this week on, I think, my Symbol account, and I shared it on Twitter too. And I was just like, you gotta love the '90s.
You do. You really do. I mean, it was the early '90s especially were a beautifully weird time for music, because unlike the early '80s when they had punk kind of seeping into like sort of synthy stuff, kind of really coming into the mainframe, you had like dying hair bands and like other genres trying to come up, like Baggy and Manchester. So like it was an interesting time for music.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so moving right along. Jonny, do you have any pet peeves you've written down?
I was trying. Well, I wasn't thinking. I wasn't thinking I wasn't thinking too much about the pet peeves, but I do have one. Thinking about it, and it's not necessarily a pet peeve as much as it is a slight nuisance I have. when a band decides to record enough music for a double album and proceeds to make fans wait for the second half of said album, like when System of a Down had Mesmerize and Hypnotize. Granted, they came out in the same year.
That was a quick turnaround.
It was a quick turnaround. But for bands like Coheed and Cambria, who write double albums, yeah, the Afterman or the Good Apollo Burning Star 4, they had some time between those parts. So, and in the case of Good Apollo, it does leave it feeling a little less like a double album and more like two records that are a little inconsistent. But I feel like, and even in some cases like Radiohead, where it's not technically a double album, but you can because they were offcuts of the one record, it feels almost cheap because I don't hate Amnesiac, but it does kind of feel like Kid A's younger brother who doesn't know what he's doing with himself. So
I mean, you could say like one example that obviously comes to mind is a recent example of the 2020 experience, Part 1 and Part 2.
Yes.
Especially in this case, where I actually kind of liked Part 1, but Part 2 was just this really bad, like, we know this is gonna be successful. Quick, make another one, and just like, release that in November, and hopefully it'll go to #1 and get some song in the top 40. I don't know.
What? Exactly. What are you guys talking about? What are you guys talking about? It's one of my favorite albums of 2012 or 2013. So good.
Made so much money.
Gotta take back the night.
Oh man. Corporate Mark Wahlberg, music corporate Mark Wahlberg's the best.
I'm assuming tie. Actually, you know what? I'm not even gonna wear a shirt.
I'm just gonna stay around. Shirtless, there's the pop songs. So I'm gonna do.
That's good.
I want him to star as a record label executive and like
just be a guest appearance on like Empire or something.
Yes. Or like in the Straight Outta Compton sequel that's coming out.
Is there gonna be a sequel coming out for that?
There is. Okay. It's gonna be about
like Tupac or something.
Tupac. Yeah.
There was already a sequel to it. It's called 8 Mile.
Ooh.
Okay.
I thought that was called. What about the sequel to 8 Mile?
What about
Suicide?
9 Mile?
Oh, was there actually a?
I heard there were rumors about
it.
that.
No way.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Or like a remake or something.
What?
No.
I was just like, why?
Wow.
Why?
Because it's gonna make money. Eminem makes money. Eminem needs another movie.
He's one of the hip-hoppers.
You know, if I gotta say, Mark Wahlberg, he at least gotta play Biggie. He's the true king of the East.
I can't.
Yes.
Oh.
It was all a dream. I used to read Word of Magazine.
I have an example. I got an example of what you were just talking about for the albums with the Part 1 and Part 2. I think one that a lot of people are still waiting on is Only One Flow, Part 2 by Flo Rida. Where is it out? It's been 5 years.
It's been killing me.
It's been 5 years, man.
I've been waiting every year for that upcoming release. I'm like, Flo Rida, is he? No. What?
You gotta hurry before there's another Flo.
Can she blow his whistle or not? I don't know. We'll find out on Part 2.
We need to find this. We need to conclude this story here, Flo.
He left so many open ends on that thing. It was kind of like become the Detox of modern hip hop.
Preach.
I don't think anything can become the Detox of modern hip hop because it was still in the modern hip hop when Detox was being talked about.
That's true. I feel like that's gonna be Only One Flow Part 2 though in 10 years.
Yeah, it will be. That's what that's gonna be in about 10 years. Give it time.
It's gonna be his big comeback.
I mean,
with sold out arena tours, behind the music.
Behind the music.
It was all going downhill until he released his most hotly anticipated record of his career.
Only One Flow. Deuce.
Deuce.
I mean, I'm just saying that the guy's got to hurry before we get a second Flow.
We have.
Well, he's been talking about catching his second wind, and I think this album is definitely just going to be where it happens, guys. I don't understand why he's taking so long, because his fans are just eagerly anticipating. I'm checking I'm checking his like Facebook page every day for updates, and it's just been silent. He's promising all these #1s. It's just
You're a fake fan. I have that liked.
So what about you, Mark? You got any pet peeves?
There probably are a couple that I'm forgetting at the moment, but one that came to mind was actually something that happened just last night.
Ooh.
Basically, so I posted an interview on this channel. If not earlier today, then yesterday, whenever I post this. Basically, I went to this show and saw this band called The Soaks, who I really like, and I want to talk about my pet peeve comes from something that happened with one of the opening bands. When bands act completely uninterested on stage.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh
And
my goodness.
what I saw at this show was like the most blatant example, because sometimes it might seem like they're uninterested, but maybe the band's members just aren't hugely outgoing or introverts. They just like playing their songs. But you can tell
They're really
at least
in the
somewhat.
zone.
But you can tell they're at least somewhat into it.
Right.
But with these guys, like they're basically like the guitarist was like has head like lazily tilted to the side and was like playing 2 chords and like these really simple leads and stuff, and neither of them were moving, and the guitarist was like screaming like random things that like I don't think were even words, and
You sure this was a post-rock show?
and the main point of this, I guess you could call it like shoegazy, but only in like how they looked that they were literally gazing at their shoes.
That's where the genre came from. They were gazing at the shoes.
Yeah,
Oh, that's nice.
thanks for explaining this.
That's a nice shoe I got down there. I'm gonna gaze at it.
But my point is that if you look like you don't care, why do you expect us to care?
What band was this? Are we not naming the band? We don't want to.
Not naming. It was just at that show. I'm not going to name names. I'm not going to make a lot of enemies.
If you're seeing a band, because I've seen Godspeed You Black Emperor live, and when I saw them, they were just stagnant things playing their craft. Is there like an exclusion to the rule? Because like I loved that. My first time listening to Godspeed You was when I saw them live, and it was a great experience because they had like some 8mm film going behind them, and they were all just playing their instruments, and it was beautiful. It was an astounding show.
Well,
and I feel like they're not a band where you're like getting energy from,
Yeah. There are some exceptions to an extent. I think that would be maybe one in case of Godspeed Black Emperor. I don't really know too much from them, but from what I've heard and what I've heard about them, it seems like their music is more about like the vibe of the music itself and like how it moves and stuff.
Yes.
And would you say there was a lot going on like on the stage in terms of visuals and stuff like that?
Well, like it was basically them, all like 12 members of the band. The film stock going with like images of like hope and like tattered writing and like deep stuff while like lights were changing.
Yeah. In case like that, like I think a good example is that actually on my birthday, going back to what we just did, Johnny, I'm going to be seeing Ghost on my birthday on October 30th.
Yeah.
And I know that Papa Emeritus isn't going to be crowd surfing, if you know what I mean.
Well, actually, let me tell you, I was actually
but-
literally just about to talk about my experience with Ghost as an example.
I'm finishing my sentence.
Sorry.
Thank you. Anyway, but I know that I'm going to be getting like a really interesting stage show from that, and that I guess would be a reason why having a ton of energy from the band members themselves wouldn't really be the #1 top priority when seeing them live. But in a case like this, where it's just like in this really small venue with this really like unknown local band that doesn't really have much going on, the least you can do is act like you care about the music you're playing, is all I'm saying.
I feel you.
Thank you.
What about your experience with Ghost, John? I wanted to hear about that.
Oh, let me.
You have permission.
Okay. Let me. Let me rewind you guys back to 2013. I'm seeing Ghost at the time known as Ghost BC, I believe, still known as Ghost BC at that time in the U.S. saw them opening for Avenged Sevenfold in Atlanta, and it was incredible. Like, it was a great performance, but the Nameless Ghouls, you know, the performers that are, you know, all in robes of black up on stage, they're not hopping around, bouncing around, yelling at everybody to mosh. It's, you know, Papa, I don't even want to say
Emeritus.
Emeritus. Okay, Papa Emeritus, you know, he's basically, like, occasionally, like, pointing at the crowd and making you feel like you're going to lose your soul for, like, 10 seconds, like, if he points in your direction. And then he points away and it's all good again. And it's not like it's the most captivating thing, like, they don't have, like, the hugest stage presence, but at the same time, I feel like just the Ghouls being up there and, like, the quality of the music and just, I don't know, you know, the leader of the band being up there and kind of being like a commanding authority figure still kind of keeps you and kept the majority of the audience, it seemed like, entertained. You know, it wasn't like they were just doing nothing on stage, but it was like you were saying about Godspeed You. It didn't really call for it.
Yeah, it's not like... Well, and that's interesting because, like, Ghost is one of those bands where, like, you can mosh out to, like, a lot of their catalog.
Sure.
So that's really interesting that, like, their stage presence doesn't necessarily reflect that. Like, it's more like about the tone and, like, the themes of their music and less about the sound of it.
Right.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I was talking about with, like, finding different ways of making your show interesting.
So there was something you guys talked about last podcast that I got really excited about, and knowing that I was going to be collaborating with you guys again, I was kind of wanting to hopefully talk about it as well. You guys got a fan question about discographies, and for those who don't know my channel, that's where I started with music reviews. I just talked about discographies, and I'm going to bring up the question again just because I don't have it committed to memory. But I know it had something to do with, like, getting into discographies and, like, where to start. Wasn't that kind of what it was kind of generally?
Essentially.
Yeah. And I think it's all contextual with the band. There's, like, and that's something I aim to do with my discography reviews, like, or at least I kind of had it visualized at the start and then, like, continued to try to do the more that I do them, because every band, you know, with my discography reviews, I try to discuss the band's sound, but also a way for a listener to fully appreciate, as much as they can anyway, a band's sound or artist's sound through albums as, like, a starting point and where to work around. So, like, take Mastodon, for example, a band that Mark and I have discussed on my channel. They have a few starting points that you could really start with in their career and get a good appreciation for their sound. For those who aren't really metalheads, you could start with their last two records, Once More Around the Sun being a bit more of the metal, or at least grittier metal side to their sound. But if you're a metalhead and you want to get into Mastodon, I'd recommend, like, Leviathan, because that's just a friggin' beautifully constructed record that is, like, one of my favorites of all time, and I think is well paced and well structured and showcases both where their sound is rooted and where their sound is projecting to go with its follow-ups.
Yeah, exactly. And continue with Mastodon. That's something we actually kind of touched on in that review, in that, like, they have gone through these different phases that warrant, like, different starting points depending on who you are as a music listener. Like, for me personally, just depending on your preferences, like, if you're into super elaborate proggy stuff, you might go to Crack the Sky. I mean, if you're into more accessibility, more hooks, then maybe The Hunter, then Once More on the Sun, or vice versa. Those two are probably the ones you'd gravitate most to. And in general, it's really interesting, like, the more diverse the artist's discography is. Like, say if you're talking about someone like Beck, you know, where you talk to this guy that really likes hip hop, and you're like, oh, you should check out Beck, and then he goes listen to Sea Change.
Yeah, that's not right. Dude, I checked out this Beck guy, and what the hell is this? You say I wanted hip hop. Why am I crying myself to sleep every night?
His flows are really slow.
Yeah, he's more singing than he is rapping. I don't understand.
He's like Drake or something.
Yeah. Drake wishes he was Sea Change level Beck.
Yeah.
He's that emotional rapper, but he's not that emotional.
Yeah. And it's also interesting because there's some bands that create trifectas. in the instance that they have a clear 3-album run where they establish a transformation in their sound. Radiohead did it. Mastodon did it. Really, Beck's one of the few artists that I can think of that hasn't done it in their catalog. The Gorillaz have done it in their short catalog. You know, where they create 3 incredibly revered and successful records, at least sonically, that both take a sound, expand it, and perfect an expansion on that sound in a way that is clamored for in many artists. And so, like...
You know what, actually? I think Ghost might be an example of this, because on their first album they had that sound, then they experimented a lot on their next one, and then on this new one, you were saying that it's like a perfect culmination of what they've done so far.
Exactly. And even in some instances, it's a little less than that, but it's similar. Like, Modest Mouse.
Oh, yeah.
With Lonesome Crowded through Good News for Bad News. I mean, you have Lonesome Crowded, which is like this... It's Lonesome Crowded. It's like an alt-rock, fun, indie rock sort of thing. And then Lonesome Crowded is that, but sad. And a bit more expanded upon sonically, whereas Good News is less that and more polished, but not losing the characteristics of the first two aforementioned records.
Yeah, and
You know.
for the second one, you meant the Moon in Antarctica, right? Because you said Lonesome Crowd West twice.
Yeah, I meant Moon in Antarctica. You understood what I was saying, but that's what I meant to say.
Yeah, man, I get what you're saying with Modest Mouse, you know?
It's just that they make accessible music now, so they're profitable. They make money.
For the corporation.
To basically sum up everything I was saying, it's contextual with every band. So if you were wanting to know, it's kind of a band-to-band basis, and that's kind of what I like to talk about on my channel.
Yeah, you know what, man? I was just trying to promote We Got Everything as the single from that album, but they won't let me do it, and I'm just like, why? You want to make that money?
Isaac, you gotta stop waiting 7 years to put out a record. No one waits 7 years for a record. Look at Guns N' Roses. That didn't work well for them.
Lowest selling album in decades.
You gotta do what Rihanna did. 5 albums every year.
And then take a 3-year hiatus.
Exactly.
And then come back with songs that really just confuse people.
Exactly. Work with Kanye West and Paul McCartney. That's what you do when you're
And
Rihanna.
they never have Paul McCartney actually really do anything.
And then make a song about someone not paying you your money.
Yep, that's exactly. That's Rihanna.
And that was inspired by my life story.
Paul actually wrote that one.
Did he? No, I think he meant "Bitch Better Have My Money." Not.
That's what I was saying. He actually wrote that one.
What?
Yeah, it was about. It was actually about an experience with Ringo back in the day. Yeah, Ringo, and he didn't exactly have some of those songwriting royalties that he owed Paul, and let's say things took a pretty ugly twist.
Wow.
But he kind of ghost wrote it for Rihanna. It's not like a well-known thing, so.
Huh.
Kind of he teamed up with that up-and-coming rapper Chuchesta. Yeah, they wrote it together, Chuchesta. I think it was them two that teamed up. They're pretty big up-and-coming songwriting duo.
Yeah,
I was impressed.
By the way, we gotta talk about this Chuchesta Myke Seatown beef. Oh my god, that diss track was
fire.
That diss from the hip hop, and then when Cal came back with that Myke song, he was venting.
He was dropping autumn ramps, autumn hip haps. Spitting the fire.
There was a line in there that just kind of, I can't remember exactly what it was. I'm actually trying to look it up right now just because I want to make sure that I get the line right.
You want to annotate it correctly.
Exactly. Like I'm on Rap Genius over here. Looking through some of the Chuchesta. Did Fantano take it down? No, never mind. There it is. I was about to say, did Fantano take it down off of Rap Genius?
Why would he?
I don't know, but Cal's line.
He's a jealous hater.
Cal drops this line. He says, "You know that you're average. That's why they call you C. You heard my tape was savage. I'm who you wanna be." Damn.
Oh. Can we just talk about that sample work?
Fantastic, Cal. I always commend him on the samples that he brings in, but this one was just...
He outdoes himself. He outdid himself.
He did. He just dropped a mixtape like 2 weeks ago, and he's already back. He's already back with another track.
It's amazing.
You got that turnaround
amazing.
rate. I mean, I know we were just talking about people dropping like part 1 and part 2 in the same year, but it's like, man, Cal, you gotta follow this up like yesterday.
Yeah, he's missing. His window's closing out. Chuchesta ain't gonna be profitable forever. He's got to try and capitalize on his income.
That's where I disagree. Chuchesta not being profitable forever. I see the sky as the limit, honestly, especially
profitable.
Exactly. I mean, if he's dropping
Drake will be opening for him.
Oh.
Yep. Already sold out arenas everywhere.
Yeah. He's gonna be the next Lil B. That's what Chuchesta is gonna be.
I see what you did
I like
there.
Lil B, but I prefer to be a big B.
Okay, so anything else we gotta talk about, or do you just want to bow out now?
I mean, I'm pretty set. I'm pretty solid.
Yeah, I think we nailed it, boys. I think we nailed a good episode here.
We've got an hour on this beat. I'm pretty sure.
This could be a best episode yet.
Are you adding in a beat for this episode, Mark? Are you putting a loop in the background?
No, that was a reference.
I was hoping that it was actually going to be like set to like certain bars, like because I feel like everything that I've said so far could pretty much be considered spitting bars.
Fair enough.
Hot fire.
Well, anything can be made into a single. It'll sell to someone,
Yeah.
These rhymes ain't free.
These bars ain't free. They better be. They can't be. They gotta be profitable. It's gotta be profitable, Kendrick.
We've got to make like a whole sketch out of record company exec Mark
Wahlberg. Oh, we're gonna have to do this again, guys. We're gonna have to with ViralRak and Spin It Reviews and ARTV all on a podcast. Let us know what you think in the comments. Did you enjoy this episode and the back and forth and our spitting hot bars?
You know what? Maybe I'll edit the intro to feature all the three.
Yeah.
I'm down.
Yeah. The question is, John, how much of your portion of the title sequence are you okay with me cutting?
All of it. All of it. I do not want to be credited. I'm like the extra in the movie.
You're ghostwriter.
He's the
I'm like Hannah Montana in High School Musical 2. I don't want to be credited.
Wait, what?
On that note, folks,
On
go to
that
Wikipedia.
Yeah.
I gotta rewatch that for the 20th time.
Well, there was an
I missed
admission.
something.
That's a twist if I've ever heard it.
Wow, John and John are just shocked over here.
We're shocked to our cores.
Third wheel, just going back to that. And with that, we say goodbye to you. So, guys, let us know what you thought about this little 3-person episode of Mad Sounds. Leave any questions you might have for like discussion ideas in the comments down below. If you want us to like keep going with their pet peeves, all that kind of stuff. Your thoughts on any of the topics here, let us know in the comments down below. And just keep watching, and because we try to at least post an episode every few weeks or so. We don't want to like let a month go by without one. It just depends on our schedules though. And yeah. Guys, say your byes.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Wait, why we just gotta say bye? Length is marketability,
Length is marketable. You gotta be 4 hours long.
Damn it, Mark Wahlberg, I'm not working for you anymore.